American politics is broken. Can it ever work again? Let's ask Congressman David Schweikert today on Equal Matters. My name is Rob Hunter, Cal the Guitar Hero, with that Equal Matters intro. The last 23 years, I've been talking about government, politics, news, and culture on the radio. A lot has changed in those 23 years. The first clue, the language that is used in politics. Now, this has always been the case somewhat, but it's different now. If you go back to America's early days, you know that politics had always been filled with disdain between the two political sides. For example, John Adams called Alexander Hamilton a bastard brat of a Scotch peddler in 3 different letters. Teddy Roosevelt once said William McKinley had no more backbone than a chocolate eclair. It was more personal back then between the politicians. Now, American politics divides us into sides. Question is there anything we can do about it? Congressman David Schweikert joins us once again to discuss how Washington really works. The congressman would say it's about 3 things in this order: money, power, and vanity. But as he says, it's always about the money. Now, fundamentally, we all understand that government collects taxes and then spends that money. As the congressman says, D.C. is a transfer system. But campaigns aren't that much different. Today, the congressman gives you an expert look from the inside. Never before in my 23 years of doing this, interviewing dozens of politicians, have I met a congressman who is so open and honest about what is truly happening in this country politically. And look, someone has to care about the future of this country, so it might as well be us. The truth may not surprise you, but you're going to have a better understanding of how the money game in politics is truly played and what we can do about it. Congressman David Schweikert is a Republican who represents the 1st District of Arizona in his 7th term. The congressman is on the House Ways and Means Committee, which appropriates all of your taxpayer money. Schweikert also sits on the Joint Committee on Economics. He's with us now on Equal Matters. Congressman David Schweikert is here as part of our ongoing series on Equal Matters, the biggest political challenges in America. So, Congressman, you and I have talked for many, many years. It does seem that since a certain guy came down an escalator a few years ago, everything politically has changed. Or maybe it's just more upfront, as in seem to be very divided. Is that true?
I will argue it was divided a good decade or 2 before that.
Go back to Iraq?
No. You see, here's actually part of my theory. So the Schweikert thesis. Yes, just what you needed is another Schweikert thesis. It's that thing you carry around in your pocket called a supercomputer. It changed the nature of what we know and what we think we know. And so let's do this sort of front and back. Much of the inbound information we get comes at us, over our computer, over our laptop, but mostly over our phone, and then cable news. People seem to forget what's the number one reason cable news exists.
Make money.
Mm-hmm. The thing it's trying to get you to click on it. Why do they want you to click on it?
Sell stuff.
Make money.
Yes.
You see, there's a theme here.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we as consumers often who are political people, who are passionate, or who really want reaffirmation of what we think we believe, we often believe this stuff is about informing us, not about getting money from us. And then you have the next layer of Dante's, so we say, terraces of hell in politics.
We're going right there, huh?
Yeah, and how much money is taken from people who care and stolen. I mean, for anyone that's listening right now, grab your phone, because we're talking about that, and look up 140 million scam packs. There was an article, I think, Politico or one of those just a couple weeks ago, talking about $140 million stolen, mostly from people on the right, convincing them that these were, political groups, or they were going to spend money on campaigns. And what it was money for scammers. People that set up a mail house, or people that set up a text messaging service. And they're stealing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars out of the political process. There's a great article from about 4 or 5 years ago called How We Killed the Tea Party. Someone's listening, look it up. And it's basically the confessions of a lawyer who says they set up these PACs and more political action committees and more political action committees. And it was, the Tea Party for freedom, the Tea Party for veterans,
anything with the Tea Party label.
And they would take your money.
Yeah.
And they were just stealing it.
Mm-hmm.
And their theory is they bled the movement of its resources so much that people just gave up. I'm getting 40 emails and text messages a day asking me for money. Do I want to be involved in this? And it's more of a problem on the right. In Washington, D.C., in the conservative circles, they joke about it. They call it the conservative industrial complex. And where people should be enraged is we need money to win campaigns. Mm-hmm. Democrats raise money. They get lots of foundations and these things, and that's a whole nother very questionable model of funding. But the money actually goes into getting voters to the polls. Our money goes to, let's do a think tank. Let's do a discussion group. Let's just steal it.
And this isn't just being stolen by Americans. For example, there are some Trump bucks. An article you sent me goes to, they think, Romania. So now that we have our smartphones and our technology, the whole world can reach into America and say, hey, we're pro-Trump, or hey, we're pro-Tea Party. So the resources, right, that could have went towards electing Tea Party candidates drained. So I imagine the same thing with Trump, right?
It's very much so. And what's always surprised me is the Trump world hasn't spent more resources to stop the scam artists. Mm-hmm. But it turns out some former Trump world people are the ones doing it.
Really?
But it's all up and down the food chain of just bleeding the conservative movement, the Make America Great sort of movement, that just even the traditional Republican movement, just bleeding it of its cash. And so I want to sort of back up. How do I get you to send $50 from a blind text message?
Scare me?
I got to scare you.
Yes.
So what happens when it's a week later and I want the next $50?
Got to scare me worse.
I'm not sure you'd use worse in that sentence, but more.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more shrill. And then 3 weeks later, it's more shrill. And a month later, it's lunacy shrill.
The end of the world.
Yeah. And that's what's happened is when you actually have candidates. Look, I'm a member of Congress. I get approached quite often by these firms that say, we will do your online fundraising. They will take 90 cents out of every dollar. So when you send $100 to your favorite conservative because that conservative said something mean and angry and they were with you on that text message, first off, that member of Congress may have never seen it.
Would they be involved? Because can they use your name?
You basically sell your name for raising the money.
So they'll give you maybe. So let's say you raise $1,000. Maybe you get $100 if you're Congressman Schweikert.
But what I'm also trying to communicate is a lot of times the messages that go out are actually getting shriller and shriller and shriller, and the member of Congress barely knows it. Because that's the fundraising.
They're not paying.
That's my fundraising consultant. They're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some members that purposely, and AOCs and the people on the left are masters at this. People go, "Oh, they're just idiots." No, they're almost prompted to find moments to say something outlandish, and then think about how many minutes it is before a fundraising email goes out. And look, I'm going to expose a little bit of my side. Think about when we were having the fight, the 15 different votes for electing a speaker. Mm-hmm. It was interesting how on some of the votes, there'd be the vote, there'd be a public statement and an email with that statement going out almost at the same time raising money on it. And so for a lot of the conservative activists, I think they're starting to figure out they're being exploited. They're being taken advantage of. So now back to the original part of the discussion. Why are politics just seem so angry and so loony?
Mm-hmm.
If to raise money, particularly online type money, it's got to get shriller and shriller and shriller and shriller. Or to keep people watching your cable show, or people, to encourage them to keep logging in and reading your blog, or reacting to your, online account. You have to keep getting more and more fringy because you need the money. And now take that, and what happens when a portion of the public, portion of the activist community actually believes that stuff is real? There's a great little sliver out there, and I've never really vetted it, but it's one of those you go, aha. There's one guy who just lost a huge lawsuit, has I think that it's InfoWars or something like that, and in his divorce, he filed a document saying that's not really me, that's a character I play on the radio and television. That's a character. And you go, look, you've been in talk radio how many years?
25.
Okay. Do we want to let the listeners to this blog know the truth?
Yes.
A number of radio personalities that you and I know, the persona, the conservative persona you're listening to on air,
not real.
It's not real. It's an actor. It's a theater. It's a character. And if you start to realize that, you should be just, what's the term, pissed off.
Yeah, yes,
just
exactly.
incredibly pissed off because they're playing us. So now I have this whole world here where people are being played for their money. And the way you get money is you make them angry. And then you wonder what's wrong with politics.
And then you add the phone in. And again, I know very limited about human psychology, but I do know that if you look at your phone and it gives you either like a dopamine hit or every time you pick it up, you're outraged, you kind of want more of that.
Oh, yeah.
So it ties in, right? That
There
smart
was some
device,
stories a couple of years ago of...
We'll get you back to Congressman David Schweikert here in just a second, but I have a question for you. Are you ready to grow in your career, but don't know how? Does the thought of getting out of your comfort zone freak you out a little bit? Are you unsure of what to do? Maybe you've looked online for some answers or read some leadership books, which gives you all kinds of great information, but it's the how you implement that always seems to be missing. Well, lucky for you, I got the how today. It's my communication and performance program called Master Your Message, because it's how you use your voice that drives results. Remember, your voice is your billboard. Your billboard is what gets you hired and promoted. Your billboard is what improves your relationships. Master Your Message shows you how to enhance communication skills so that you can understand, you can grow, and you can lead. Because leaders use communication skills to build strong relationships more quickly that open up opportunities. This is the advice that Richard Branson and Warren Buffett give. As a business leader, communication skills are most important. They suggest working on them. The how is with Master Your Message. Your ability to communicate effectively gives you a massive competitive advantage. Hi, I'm Rob Hunter. I'm the host of Equal Matters. I'm a communication and performance coach that can help you use your voice to create opportunities for yourself. And when those opportunities arise, we can show you how to perform at your best. These are skills that will help you lead, influence, and build a strong team. If you have questions, awesome. Let's schedule a free 20-minute call with me by going to paintedporchstrategies.com/Rob. paintedporchstrategies.com/Rob. Or check the show notes. You'll find a link right there. Master Your Message is about you. It's about your future. It's about your growth. It's how you use your natural voice to get what you want. So let's set up that phone call, paintedporchstrategies.com/Rob, or head into the show notes. Speaking of the show, let's get you back now to Congressman David Schweikert. So, and then you add the phone in. And again, I know very limited about human psychology, but I do know that if you look at your phone and it gives you either like a dopamine hit or every time you pick it up, you're outraged, you kind of want more of that.
Oh, yeah.
So it ties in, right? That
smart There was some stories a couple of years ago of, and the actual story I think was about CNN, but they were talking about why do they use certain subjects over and over and over and over? It's because they can track, if they said Trump's name so many times, their viewership watched. Well, no, it wasn't about it going up. They retained it longer.
Oh,
you stayed
saw more
watching
ads.
longer because you were pissed.
Yeah.
And
stayed pissed
and so,
for 4 days.
So what happens when you're someone like I am? I believe the United States is on the cusp of disaster financially, and trying to explain the scale of the problem and that there's solutions. But that's complex. Mm-hmm. It requires thinking. Sorry about it, but it does.
No, it's truth. It's the truth.
And yet it doesn't necessarily give you that instant rage.
Right.
Where I have a couple of my friends who are my friends. They really are. But they are so good at getting up and saying something outrageous and getting you pissed off. And they know it's just theater. Mm-hmm. But it works.
So are these some Republicans, Democrats as well, Congressman, that are in these gerrymandered districts where they're Republican plus 36, Democrat plus 24, so they know that they're going to win? Or is it bigger than that? It's
much bigger than that because it's a business.
Mm. So you're a brand as a congressman or woman.
Yeah, in many of those districts, you become a brand, and it's driven by the consulting community. Remember, there's going to be billions and billions and billions and billions spent in the next election cycle. And there's armies of people out there that want to spend your money. For many of these folks, they're taking 20%. On some of the fundraising, they're taking 90%, mm-hmm. The online fundraising. So for, let's say you're the retired person living a modest life, but you care so much about trying to save the country, and you're writing your $100 a month, you should be enraged that if you sent that online to a text message you got or an email you got, that the fundraising house may have just taken 90 cents out of that dollar, or that much of that money. I mean, there's a number of groups out there, and I'm not going to get all the names just right. The Stop Hillary group and others from a few years ago, that there's some great stories about none of the money actually ever went to a single ad, a single attempt to move votes. It was a fundraising. And then what they did is they built lists. And then they call people like me and say, we have a list of people that signed up for this. Do you want to buy it? So if you ever get one of these where you're all of a sudden you're looking at the Drudge Report or looking at Real Clear Politics, and this little pop-up ad comes saying, how do you feel about, this? Give us your email address and vote. They didn't ask you for money because they mined your email address or your phone number to text you to sell it.
You're the product.
You're the product.
Mm-hmm. How do we, as someone that might want to donate to politics, what should we look out for? Because, again, you mentioned all the buzzwords, right? For the conservative movement, it is the name Trump, remove Hillary, Tea Party. So we got our buzzwords. I'm sure the left
and the
has
Democrats
their
did the same thing, impeach Trump
and
all the.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They had their own. The numbers look like, though, it's much, much more devastating on our side. The number of races we should have won last election cycle, but we just didn't have enough money at the end because it was in some scam pocket, some consultants' pocket, some fundraisers' pocket. And there's more. We're going to talk about a little bit more of this. There's some basic rules, but Frank, first give you a concept.
Yes. If
you're going to give money to charity, you go to, Charity Navigator. Mm-hmm. And you figure out saying, I have my $100 I'm going to give this month. I should give it to Salvation Army. 93 cents out of every dollar goes to the cause, not to United Way, because only 50 cents goes to the cause. Mm-hmm. We need a Charity Navigator, particularly for conservative political politics. How many of these groups where almost all the money they're asking for that PAC goes to fundraising and not actually winning elections? The other thing you need to consider is what's your goal? There's some groups that want to push a certain philosophy. Okay, contribute to a think tank. Continue to a lecture series.
Like the Cato Institute or something along those lines.
Likes to write highbrow papers on more libertarian economics. Mm-hmm. Wonderful stuff. But if you give a damn about winning the next election, because that's, I believe, one of our great difficulties when taking on Democrats. Democrats want to win. They fixate on the steps to how do I move these last few voters, and our folks. We'll talk about that more because there's a series of sort of cultural problems we have within the conservative movement. Give money directly to the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
Then once you're done doing that, there's a handful of political action groups out there that have really good efficiency. But if it's one you've never heard of before, be really skeptical. Just from the standpoint, what happens when you have someone saying, I'm going to be the executive director. I'm going to pay myself $300,000 a year.
Exactly.
And then I have my assistant. And then I have the fundraiser. And then I have my lease space. And I have this. There were hundreds of PACs last election cycle that raised millions and millions and millions of dollars, and not a dime of the money they raised ever went to help a candidate.
And is there a legal fix for that, or is it First Amendment free speech?
It probably is not a legal fix.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure I want government getting.
Good point.
So being there's a little geeky for anyone who gets this. It's very Gilderish. There's an economist named George Gilder who uses this thing called information theory. If you had the information, you choose wisely.
Yes.
We need to find some way. Yet when I talk to the NRCC or the RNC or other groups that they're saying, we really need to put up a charity navigator for political contributions, they just look at you in horror, because it turns out some of the lawyers, fundraisers doing this are part of the fraternity. And once again, now you're into sort of the conservative version of the deep state.
So fascinating, Congressman, because I listen to that as a guy that cares about the future of this country, wants your kids, 7 and 1, to have a better future than the one I live in right now. And I think that deep down, we all kind of agree on that. It's just, how do we get there? So I look at this, what you're saying, and it's hard for me not to just go, well, the end is here, throwing my hands up.
We have too many people trying to make a living off politics. If you could see the inbound I get every election cycle, I want to come work for you. Pay me $4,000 a month and I'll answer phone calls, or I'll put up your signs. I want $35,000, or so screw it. I go out and put up my own damn signs. It's good lat workout.
And you get to meet interesting people while you're out.
And look, that's actually part of the problem. Is you have lots of folks out there. It's some that see these astronomical amounts of money and think that they want to participate in. It is outrageous when you realize what some campaigns raise, and then how little of it ever actually went to talking to a persuadable voter. One of the other great scams in modern politics is, I'm going to raise $1 million and put it on television. How many of your persuadable voters are actually watching?
Like
local.
If you watch Fox News, for example, you know where you stand. You watch MSNBC, you know where you stand.
So you go and buy, for $9,000 a 30-second ad on local news, and how many local news, viewers were your persuadable voters? But if you're the political consultant, you just got 15% of that.
So it works for you.
Yeah.
And this is what's helping to divide America. So, because again, you have a rule, which you've taught us: money, power, vanity.
Mm-hmm.
Always comes back to the money.
Yes.
So the money is being used not for America's awesome, but for our own needs, selfish needs. And it's helping to create this bigger Grand Canyon-sized chasm.
Yep. We finance now, and understand, it's both that money, and then it's my same argument with like cable television or the blogs or those things, we go log on to, is I won't give the exact examples because I will hurt people's feelings, but think of some of the things where one of the so-called conservative news websites puts up a story, and it's so outrageous. Everyone's passing around, clicking on. Everyone's passing around, clicking on. But it turned out There was no truth to it.
Happens daily.
We had one put up a couple stories about they were burning the ballots at an egg farm.
Oh, yeah, right.
Way out in
Arizona.
West Phoenix. And I got sent that article dozens of times. And every time someone clicked on it, they were probably getting 20 cents, 50 cents from, the little banner ads on the side and this and that. So we did a quick back of the math. They may have made $35,000, $50,000 off that one fake story. And it enraged people because if the story was true, it would have been just outrageous. Well, then 3 weeks later, we were hand counting the ballots at the stadium. So, you're going, okay, did anyone just realize we got played for someone to get money from clicks?
And is it okay? And I think there's a big challenge too, Congressman, because not a lot of people want to admit that, right? It's like you're in this ecosystem, in this circle, and you can't get out of the circle.
Now, we're going to now work our way to a couple more levels of Dante's Terraces of Hell.
He had a plan coming in today.
Oh, yes. There are websites out there that specifically exist to put up fake stories. And there's one of them that's actually fairly famous. I mean, it put up a story about 2 months ago that the Obamas will be entombed on the Capitol Mall. And isn't this outrageous? And people were sending it around. But on the website that made up the fake story and used graphics and everything, on the bottom it says, this website is dedicated to showing how we can fool Republicans.
Wow.
They admit it. They admit that this is a website to demonstrate that they can lead Republicans around and fool them because our passions, we are so distrustful.
Yes.
Which we belong being distrustful. We just also need to be skeptical of those who are trying to play us.
Because there is that, right? There's always, if there is a lack of trust and there's a ton of information out there on your phone, it's exploitable.
Yep. And so now you go further. Much like when I do one of my floor speeches, I have one I did just a couple days ago. It's, I think, already 45,000 views, probably has 500 comments on it. Half those comments are bots. Most people don't realize when you see these comments coming in, and remember, there's bots now that will text you, and it almost seems like normal language. These bots are automatically filling out the comment sections and the YouTube videos. We've gotten good at identifying them.
Yeah.
A lot of them come out of Russia and other places. But so, all of a sudden you'll have this very thoughtful comment about the debt and, fertility rates in the United States. And then the next one, this crazy story, if we would just defund, Israel and this and that. And you go back and look at, okay, and say, that's the exact same language from 6 months ago here. It's just a bot.
Spot the pattern.
Yeah, it's a bot.
And that's what, so when I started in this business 23 years ago, I guess, 2000 was the year. The internet was just getting fast. It was so much easier to research, to find stats that are true. Now in 2023, it takes me 2 or 3 times as long to confirm what's real and what's not.
It's getting good at finding websites that are functional and credible. But I can give you an example because, I've been around talk radio a long time also. Go back to when you were very first in. Do you remember the term seminar callers?
Oh,
Rush Limbaugh used to talk about that.
Yes, I do.
So 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and Democrats were the ones who did this. They would have their predecessor to MoveOn.org and this and that. They would come in and train their activists how to line up. And when Congressman so-and-so is going to be on the radio, they would line up and fill up the calls. In many ways, that was the predecessor to now they just sit on computers and make up stories and send it in. It's the same mechanism.
Yep.
They now teach people how to go onto every little website, from your homeowners association comment section on to the newspaper to this and that, and you see these attacks come at you. Understand, many of them, those are activists without lives.
Or they get paid to do that as a job,
or now, as I was going to head towards, it's getting automated. If you've played with the chat GPTs and this and that, you're about to see it absolutely insane levels of weaponization of the internet this next coming election cycle, because if you know where to look for them, there's websites that will sell you, would you like 10,000 bots, natural language on this subject you can customize for $500?
Wow.
I mean, and it's coming at us.
Yeah.
There's some stories out there that maybe half of parts of internet traffic now are just automated bots.
Which is, it's mind-blowing to think of that. But
so
if you know that number, now you can be aware of it.
Okay, so back to your premise. Why are politics so vicious? What happens when so much what you know isn't real?
Exactly.
And it's not that they're trying to, in many ways, as much manipulate you on the Republican versus Democrat, socialist versus freedom, those sorts of things. They're also trying to manipulate you to get you emotional, to get your money.
Yeah.
Or to completely so distort you that you will say things and those things so the Democrats can say, you see how crazy they are? And then there's the classic problem of human reaffirmation. I say something, it's a little outrageous, and I get some people say, I've thought that same thing. And then you get a little more outrageous because you got love, and you really want the love. And you go down this sort of spiral of insanity.
Yeah. So how do you, being in the middle of it, in Congress, you're there, I don't know, 40 weeks a year, 38 weeks a year in D.C., too many weeks a year.
It's a horrible place.
How does this manifest itself in actual politics? Because there was some charade going on, but you guys as politicians would kind of get together and do stuff, and it would be fine.
I will tell you, first, if this were a year or two ago, I used to get people would send me things saying, David, did you see this? And it would take me a good 40 to 90 seconds to look it up, find out it's a fake story. I'd send them back the link showing it's a fake story. And the person that sent it to me gets mad at you.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, the lunacy. They get mad at you for showing them that that's not. Or my favorite one, do you see all these weapons coming across the border? And, yet it's a tropical picture. So you now can take a picture and put it into Google, and it tells you where. And it was from, 15 years ago, a drug bust in Panama, and you send it back to them. Well, I'm now mad at you for telling me the truth. What's happened to us when we care so much more about having our passions satiated than actually fixating on the things that actually save us? The amount of energy it goes into doing lunacy instead of finding that 5 to 7% of the swing voters that will decide the next election. That is everything. And yet, trying to get people to fixate that that's everything. It's that small margin of voters who pay no attention. They're going to go home and watch Netflix tonight because they're tired of all the noise.
And then October of 2024.
Yeah, they're going to pay attention for about 2 weeks and vote.
Yep.
And so the circle, as we're going to continue here, when you've made things so shrill, what happens when you're afraid to put a bumper sticker on your car? What happens when you have individuals in your neighborhood that are political and they won't put a yard sign up because they're so almost fearful? I'm going to get my house egged. Right. I seriously, I get that shockingly.
I saw many of your signs defaced in the 2022 election.
Oh yeah, that just goes with
along with everybody else.
Yeah, but you replace them, and and I get swastikas and all sorts of just evil. Yeah, no, it's not
clearly
funny.
Someone who doesn't know Congressman Schweikert.
Yeah, it's just very odd. I think half the community thinks I'm Jewish, which is fine. I'm okay. I'm fine with that. I don't care. But it just shows you there's sort of a darkness out there, but I want to come back to this. I've spoken at, let's say, a conservative women's group. And you pull in, and if this were 20 years ago, every single car would have had a Save Freedom, Republican, this and that, bumper sticker on every single car. Today, maybe just a few of them will. And you talk about it in the room, say, well, I don't want my car to be keyed. My neighbors are angry leftists.
Mm-hmm.
If the left is succeeding at intimidating us to the point where you will not put a yard sign up, If the left is succeeding at intimidating us to the point where you will not put a bumper sticker on, they're winning.
And then they add in, and this is what I've also noticed, and you obviously have noticed this too, not just from the bots, but the language around politics is so much more elevated. I hear the term terrorist used about Americans a lot. Right-wingers or left-wingers or communists.
My favorite one is ultra MAGA.
Yes.
Not
regular MAGA.
Not MAGA, ultra MAGA.
And there's extreme MAGA.
So does that mean like there's twice as many calories? I mean, I'm trying to figure out that.
Yeah. But I think like if I'm emotional, right, and I'm a voter and I pay attention and I hear something about Congressman David Schweikert, that he's an XYZ, and I'm like, oh my God, he is an X, Y, or Z. So now I think you're the scum of the earth.
But in many ways, it's more than just me. In my last couple of cycles, I think they've spent $24 million in the last two cycles.
And that's just
beating the crap out of me.
Seats, but that's
that's one congressional
Senate
seat.
Race money typically.
Yeah, it used to be.
Yeah.
But I've been around long enough. I've knocked on enough doors. It's at a certain point, they keep spending money, and God bless them. I'm happy to have them waste it, so it's not affecting a race where they could actually win. But my heartbreak is it's the people stealing the money, the folks who are being taken advantage of, the shrillness that is used to get that money, and then the fact that we use the shiny object problem. Let's talk about the shiny object problem. This is more of a sin of news. Is let's talk about a beer can, or let's talk about this or that. No, it's newsworthy.
Sure.
But is it newsworthy for 6 months?
No, not in my opinion.
But at the same time, you have so many other things going on. And because it's easy, it doesn't cost anything to produce. So years ago, I had a friend who actually I went to high school with, who ended up, I think, getting a job as an analyst, a producer at CNN. I think she's now long since retired. But she talked about the O.J. Simpson trial and how that changed cable news forever. And here was the concept. We can put one truck, one reporter, and get an entire day's worth of coverage. We don't have to have hundreds of reporters in the fields and lots of, research teams and lots of people out hunting for a story. And, half the time the story doesn't pan out, so you don't put it on the air.
Right.
Now it's just park someone in front and you got the story all day long. Didn't cost you anything to produce. You didn't have to, the content was given to you.
And it was salacious in its nature.
It was easy.
Trial. Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, easy.
So what happens when you have, particularly in cable news, it's what's easy. Now, and you pump it up, you make it sound dramatic, but you don't have teams flying all over the world or staking out a house for days at a time, or this and that, doing research, actual news. It's cut and paste. How many reporters today, for everyone that's listening, go take your favorite story. I don't care if you're on the right or the left. Go take your favorite story and then read through them and realize how many of the news sources were someone on Twitter.
Almost all of them now.
So-and-so commented on their Twitter account that,
Exactly.
The federal debt will hit this number at this time. You do realize that's insane.
Yes, but it's easy.
And part of it is for a lot of the, I was in the state legislature as a child for 2 terms and went away for a decade and a half. Was never going to do politics again. Got sucked back into this life.
How? How did you get sucked back?
Oh, you don't want to know. I got sort of conned to become the county treasurer and a couple other things. So,
which is a good
I loved it. It was
Yeah.
absolutely some of the most fast. People have no idea how much money moves through there, and the responsibility is not to make any mistakes. But that's besides the point.
No big deal.
But where I was going is, so I was in the state legislature in 1991, 92, 93, 94. There used to be this paper, a legitimate paper back then called the Arizona Republic. I don't even know if it's still around. For anyone listening out of state, that's an Arizona joke.
Yeah.
And
go on their website and you'll understand exactly what Congressman Schweikert means.
Oh, there's grocery flyers with more content.
Yeah, it's bad.
But at that time, they had like 4 reporters, a couple of people that they were called bird dogs, just sniffing around asking if there's stories, and then a couple of researchers to cover the state legislature.
Right. Today,
I think they have like a person.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much harder to find the content. You have to go to the lawmakers themselves, essentially, to say, hey, what's going on in there? Because
are there Twitter accounts?
Oh, that's even better. Exactly.
But where I was going with this is the news model sort of broke financially with our technology. And now when you have a reporter's research is quoting someone's Twitter account, oh, dear heaven.
More with Congressman David Schweikert in just a second. But do you feel like your wheels are spinning, doing the same thing over and over again, like stuck in the mud and unsure what to do to get unstuck from the mud? Well, there's a reason you think this way. The mud is not what you think. It's not your job or your boss. It's that voice in your head, the voice that leads to fear, low confidence, and self-doubt. Hi, I'm Rob Hunter, the host of Equal Matters. For most of my life, that was me. Till I decided to take action. I took action for me by investing in myself, action that helped me build confidence. Building my confidence block by block helped me double my income and put me in the driver's seat of my life. Everything I've learned in almost 30 years of broadcasting, I now offer you as Master Your Message, a self-paced course with 8 modules and 8 hours of content to help you understand how your own internal voice gets you stuck in the mud, and how that internal voice leads to the emotions you feel, and how those feelings and thoughts impact how you show up every single day. With Master Your Message, you can go from self-doubt to confident. You can feel in control of your mind, your emotions, and your actions and life. It's only $197. Additionally, Master Your Message will also teach you how to nail those presentations, how to listen more intently to become a better performer, how to handle disputes, and how to use different communication styles based on where you're at. What you say is your billboard. Broadcast wisely with Master Your Message. Do the work, open the doors you want, and get a seat at the table you want. Here's how to get started. Go to paintedporchstrategies.com/communication. paintedporchstrategies.com/communication. Or go to the show notes and find the link right there. Now, let's get you back to
the news model sort of broke financially with our technology. And now when you have a reporter's research is quoting someone's Twitter account, oh, dear heaven.
Congressman David Schweikert.
You know, the absurdity of it.
So there are numerous challenges with that, right? Because the information flow is different. The money is different. And I don't even know how to even approach this divide as an individual. So I look at it as it's kind of up to me as a person to figure this out, to say what's a scam and what's not.
Well,
but how do you do that on a bigger scale, like this mass, I don't know, call it an awakening?
Yeah, I don't have a brilliant answer on this, though I do see something in our polling. And we do a number of focus groups. I'm in a very competitive district. We're probably one of the most polled districts in America.
Which is one of only about 30 left out of the 435.
It really gets down to about 19 if you really do the real math.
Wow.
And just the nature of people, you know, in some ways, the segregation in society isn't by your religion or race. It's by your ideology.
Yeah, and I actually think that's the new religion.
In some ways it is. But we have a very large number of independents. It is fascinating how independents consume news differently than someone that's, you know, to the right or someone that's to the left. Someone that's committed on the left, they're going home and listening to MSNBC. On the right, they're watching OEN or, you know, Fox or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. But the independents actually will have a wider breadth of types of news they take. And that's both hopeful and makes it a lot more work.
Well, this project that I'm working on is designed because there are limits to what I can do in my day-to-day job, because for us, it's about 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And that's traditionally how people listen to the radio.
Well, and we're a driving city. So.
Yes. But, you know, you listen to your 10 minutes, your commercials come on, a lot of people change the channel, maybe they come back, maybe they don't, maybe they get out of the car. So it's hard to have a conversation like this in a 10-minute window that people can access, because you get a nice surface level, maybe you get to kind of a mid-level, But to get to this depth, it's very challenging to do, but that's always where the good solutions are.
So can I throw you some of the Schweikert version of solutions?
Yes.
If you're going to give money to a campaign or politics of any kind, vet it. Money to a candidate is the most powerful thing you can do.
And that is go to your website, say donate now.
Now, as I say that, there is a caveat.
Okay.
You really, really hate candidate, a congressperson so-and-so or senator so-and-so, and you're going to give money. There's a whole new trend now of flashy candidates who have no chance of winning. So a case in Baltimore a couple years ago, a very attractive, incredibly well-spoken candidate running against and she's running as a true conservative against an incumbent in the city of Baltimore.
Yeah, right, where Democrats have ruled
and was on cable television like every other night, saying all the right things and making us feel good as conservatives, and raised $20 plus $1 million. And then the story later that most of the money actually went to her campaign consultant. Wow. And it was a theater. It wasn't real. It was it was scripted. It's just like I believe AOC in many ways was. She, auditioned for the part. She was scripted, and she reads her script and now lives it. She's a method actor.
Quite well. Does it quite well.
Oh, yeah. And raises lots of money with it. We're seeing this on the right side. It's a district that, and that candidate lost by like 38, 40 points.
As you would expect.
Yeah.
And we've seen $5 or raised $20 million.
And we've seen it here in Arizona, in some of these districts that are 30, 38 point, 40 point Democrat districts. I'm going to win. Send me money. And they don't. But somehow we never know where all the money. So if you're going to invest in a race, decide if it's also a race where your dollars make a difference. And it's the flip side is if it's also a 40-point Republican district, the Republican isn't losing.
Right, exactly.
Oh.
But it has to somehow, we have to get back to reality as individuals.
Thinking, just thinking.
Yes.
So because I was going to save this to the very end, because this seems to enrage political people. Politics is math.
Meaning it's about the votes?
No,
and
it's
the
about
money?
it's math. That's a winnable district. That is not a winnable district. We already own that district. This is the dollars that could win that district. This is the dollars that you could raise all the money in the world. There are, many races. You can spend a fortune. You cannot move the voters.
Right.
There's things. At some point, the math tells you these things. People would say, well, polling isn't real. The polling you may see as a layperson, because you went on Real Clear Politics and tracked the polls, understand a lot of the big boy polling, the stuff that has really interesting data, you're never seeing. And a real poll, when you print it out and have all the cross, is a couple thousand pages. A real poll, I've been doing this for a long time. I as a young man, I was around pollsters and the statistics and things like that. It takes days to actually read a real poll because, the top line is interesting, but what you want is, why do suburban women in these 4 zip codes between this age really, really like us? What do we do there? And the zip codes over here, the same population doesn't like us. The understanding those data sets. Politics is actually math. Good politics is. But you don't separate people from their money with math. You do it with emotion.
Of course.
You often recruit votes with emotion. So do not mix the reality of how you professionally run a campaign, because campaign is about telling your story. It's about messaging. And, that the emotion goes with that, with the math of here's what's doable. So back to my theory. If you're going to give money, don't get scammed. There's groups like Freedom Works. There's groups like the Club for Growth. There's others out there that have been around a long time that have high levels of efficiency. they're good at what they do. And they often have very large contributors that cover their overhead, so your money has high efficiency. Greatest dollar you can contribute is directly to a campaign. Do not undervalue silly things. Put up the yard sign. Put on the bumper sticker. We have some things where, there was a study years ago, and God knows what it is now, saying that a bumper sticker was worth like $300.
Really?
That's from like 20 years ago. Just because the moving advertising.
Absolutely. The constant sight, right? That reminder.
If you're in a competitive district, yard signs are very valuable because it sort of convinces neighbors saying, well, they're decent people. They mow their lawn, and they sort of like that person. They must know something. Because for most folks, they're never going to meet the candidate.
Right.
They're never going to listen to a podcast like this. That they're just trying to survive. They're trying to take care of their family, their kids, deal with the cost of everything. In some ways, this is sort of an intellectual leisure to be able to listen and think about subjects like this. So that's some of the top part on the financial side. On the political side, decide what you care about. Are you someone that's a fiscal conservative? You're terrified the country is crashing and burning in debt? Are you someone that's passionate about life or animals or something else? What do you actually care about? Get good at that subject. Read adult professional stuff about that subject. Know the subject. And then reach out and be helpful to people that are with you.
Be a resource
on that subject. Well, in some ways, it's not the resource of, I'm going to explain it to you. Saying, do you agree with me on this? Good. I'm going to gather up my friends and we're going to help you. And here's where the political arrogance comes. So this will tie together a bit. One of the reasons some of our polling looks like we lost some of our races here in Arizona last cycle.
Very close
races. But how in some of the district like mine, I win some of the
as a Republican,
as a fairly conservative
tough district. Yeah.
And let's face it, go look at my scores. I'm
you got the bona fides.
Oh yeah, I have very conservative score numbers. And others around me who are very articulate, attractive candidates didn't. And there's this moment where we like to talk about issues and the passions of the people that are often at our rally or at our little town hall or at the backyard get-together who are applauding for us. Problem if they're there, they're already with us.
Right.
The ability to talk to that family that's down the street that dropped out of politics, so they re-registered as independents or they think of themselves as independents, and they just want someone to show you give a damn about them.
To be seen and be heard, right?
No. In this case, it's, do you care about my groceries? Do you care about, I can barely afford to fill my gas tank? Do you care that we're terrified of how we're going to pay for our kids' college, how our own retirement? And there's one of our real problems, particularly as Republicans, is we have some issues that we care so much about, but you got to deal with the reality. The votes you often need, these folks over here, that's not their passion. They're just trying to survive. Show you give a damn. Focus on them. Focus on their needs. Focus on their cares. Show you are there to represent them, not just represent what you already care about. And we could see that, and then the other parts of understanding that's hard to do. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of work. And in politics, we're often lazy because we want to be out campaigning. We want to go talk to people.
The sexy stuff.
Instead of, we don't want to spend 2 weeks reading every crosstab in the poll and understanding how to really, reach out and be a decent human being to the population. It needs you to actually show up and care about them.
Is that how you approach? So again, I live in your district. It's a tough district as far as politics goes because there's a lot of independents, there's a lot of Democrats, but you don't, when you're campaigning, resort to fear tactics. So even for a politician, is there a way to go without?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. I'm sorry. It matters who you're talking to and what you're talking about. The reality of it is when you're talking about the scale of the debt and how it's going, you may have to actually use some fear tactics. Now, It's a demonstration of what is a fear tactic. And the problem is you and I are paying attention. Political people are paying attention. So if you're a political person, I use this as a story. What's the number one reason we put up street signs, not yard signs? Yard signs have a completely different effect. Why do you put up street signs?
Awareness. Know where you live. Know where to go.
One of the craziest things, but I've grown to believe this. I had a professor of political science 30, 40 years ago say, the number one reason we do street signs is we're trying to convince the people that think they already know everything about politics you're taking the race seriously. Because if you're a political person, you drive down 44th Street or wherever you're driving, you not only see the signs, you count them. You grade them. You actually think in the back of your head, that was a horrible placement. Oh, that one, that person used zip ties instead of wires. I know this sounds insane, but I'm giving you some insight into the psyche. Mm-hmm. But that's 5% of the population. They already know from day one, you can spend a fortune. You're not changing their votes. They already know where they're going.
Yeah.
They don't decide the election.
But back to that 5 to 7% where the math comes in.
Exactly. And so there's often our problems is we get so wrapped in to the bubble that we don't break out of our own bubbles in politics. And my argument is back to the beginning. We walk around with the phone. We don't like it when people are beating up on us, but we love it when people are saying nice things to us. We end up, even as politicians, desperately going to the reaffirmation.
Right.
And so, but
that doesn't win.
I'll give you a deep secret. My wife and I haven't looked at our social media in probably a decade. We just don't. There's other people who are paid to do that. Yeah. And they get a kick out of because they can analyze now how much are just bots. Or there's one Democrat activist here in the Phoenix area that is very proud and oddly enough talks about it, that he owns dozens of monikers on different Republican websites and districts and this and that, where he pretends to be, I'm Roy the cowboy from Cave Creek. And over here, I'm Sven, the immigrant who's a Republican. And all day long, and I think he's paid to do this. Mm-hmm. And it's fake. We need to stop being so easily manipulated and back to money where it has an effect, the issues you passionately care about, and move those with candidates that can win.
In Washington, is there conversations you have with Democrats that are effective, or is it so far gone that the parties just don't talk at all?
No. The vast majority of issues, believe it or not, are administrative. We're going to name a post office. Yeah. Fine. No one cares.
Right. Yes, you get my yes vote.
Okay. Hey, we're going to go after this type of fraud in Medicare. Okay. The Dem might not like the way I want to do it, but they understand fraud in Medicare is bad. There's actually a member of the Ways and Means Committee with me. He's liberal. He's not crazy, though.
So you can talk to him.
You can talk to him, and he has a sense of humor. and he also has a certain amount of agriculture in his district, which, as he says, is very grounding. Because, as he says, these people, his term is, I'm sort of their token Democrat. They're hardworking, salt of the earth. I can't do crazy and get their vote. So he and I had done a series of pieces of legislation that were just good quality. I mean, clean up some basic things in the tax code, this sort of stuff. A couple of years ago, he comes to me and says, Schweikert, I can't do any more bills with you. I'm getting the crap beaten out of me in my primary because there's pictures of you and I together working on these pieces of legislation, and you're one of those right-wing nut jobs.
As all Republicans are,
well,
to many in the left, and vice versa.
And look, I do have one of the more conservative scores. I mean, it just is what it is. But I like to say I'm conservative, but I'm good at math.
Yes.
I mean, if you can convince me my math is wrong, I'll accept reality. But as he said, they were so aggressive towards him on the left that he was not supposed to work with Democrats because that was compromising.
Right.
Now,
and even that picture of you guys gets used
exactly.
against him by his primary opponent.
So we still do some work together. But we'll do bills where he's helping, but he won't even go on as a co-sponsor. That's really screwed up.
Yeah.
But it goes back. But if you layer back the peels, it's not him. It's the activists. How do the activists get such distorted information? It's the troll army coming through their phones and the internet that have decided they're going to raise money we're going to beat up this guy. We're going to raise money for his primary opponent and make crap up. So I still always believe it sort of comes back to the people that they may be passionate about politics, but they need the rage for the clicks, the ratings, or to raise money.
And it comes down to me, Congressman, that there's a certain level of manipulation in that. And that, to me, is the freeing part.
Not a certain amount.
Okay.
It is. No, it is manipulation. We just spent an hour talking.
That's
it's
true.
Manipulation.
So, in wrapping up here, it is. You said last time we talked, and you've said many times before, you are pathologically optimistic. Even on this
I'm
divide
61 years old with a 10-month-old.
Yes,
I better be.
Exactly. But how do you stay optimistic in terms of you have a friend who's a Democrat? You used to be able to work together in public, but now that you can't, how do you go forward as politicians through that?
It's becoming harder and harder. If I'm going to be brutally honest, I tried to keep a happy face on. But
unless you're delivering a floor speech, which,
by
the way, go on the Forbes channel
yeah.
and look at Congressman Schweikert's floor speeches. But again, if you want reality, which is what this whole podcast project is designed around, is to be realistic rather than flame-throwing whatevers.
And
get down to the truth.
And understand, I'm pissing off Republicans almost as much as
you and me
Democrats.
both, brother.
Because I've had some saying, I did a town hall and they got mad at me because I didn't, but when you get up and show that Medicare is the primary driver of sovereign debt over the next 30 years, and the political class has lied over and over and over to the public, or you show that, hey, I can take every dime from people over $400,000 a year, and bingo, I got a little bit, but it doesn't really do anything.
What did you say? It's like 16 days of borrowing or something
no,
like that?
it matters on how you do. Do you take their income? Do you take all their wealth? But remember, the 400,000 and up is only 2% of America. You're not financing the government on 2% of America.
And if they're the highest output earners or whatever, you take that away from them.
The base number today, you wanted to stabilize U.S. sovereign debt at about 97% of debt to GDP, to the size of the economy. You need a 24% FICA tax. So the Social Security tax is 24%.
You'd have to double.
So, you double that, and you need a 20% value-added tax, and it needs to be the value-added tax where it's on every step of production.
So if it
like
was
the
a car,
hardcore European model.
Yeah, it would be like hundreds of things.
Yes.
And that would increase the cost of the car.
And without, now what's perverse on this math, without removing any of the other taxes.
Oh.
This isn't a substitute. This is without removing any of the other taxes.
So it'd make the car go up by a lot, which would make less cars be purchased.
It's without even doing the dynamic scoring in the economy, because the fact of the economy. But you get these Democrats. If we just raise taxes a little bit, we could cover Social Security. No, to stabilize it, you need about 24%. But my ultimate answer here is the electeds are sort of creatures of the people they represent.
Yes.
And almost no one really talks about this. If all the inbound you're getting from your district is, I hate this or I want this, guess what you do? You hate that or you want that. It really is a representative democracy. And if you want to change the political class, you got to change the constituents and what they know, their willingness to reach out, and how crisp they are of the difficulties. So think about that. We've recently gone through the debt ceiling fight.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to say, I understand debt means this, and you need to use that for leverage in the debt. Or you get the phone call that says, the debt ceiling fight is inconveniencing me. We're taking our family up to Grand Canyon in a couple of weeks. We don't want it to be shut down.
Right.
Screw the country. Our vacation's more important.
Exactly.
And trust me, I get a lot more calls like that of don't inconvenience me than I ever do of calls saying, please, I'm worried about the country. You got to stabilize this borrowing and spending. And in that case, you get lots of elected people that when you see them constantly voting for more spending and voting for more spending and voting for more spending, it's because that's the inbound. The hallways of Congress are crowded. You know, the age of COVID's over. They're crowded. And those are all people begging for more money.
Whew. So that's a challenge, but that's reality. Is this a reality too? Percentage of politicians that will do anything to get reelected seems very high. And that's why on our afternoon show, Russell and Hunter in Phoenix, I always remind people that means you have the ultimate power as a we the people. So if the we the people as individuals can figure what you just described out, right? Our awareness, being aware of scams, contributing directly, and these are our priorities.
And actually, the issues they care about, become good at it. Know the issue.
So many strategies you can do with that.
No, I get some friends who are passionate about protecting the Second Amendment, but they're too busy in their life to spend a little bit of time understanding, here's what the last Supreme Court said. Mm-hmm. Here's what ATF's rule really says. Those things. And it's hard. And sometimes, particularly in the firearm community, it's hard finding folks who are credible, who aren't just trying to scare you to get you to send them a check.
Of course.
But if you are really good at it, you become a resource to the elected person saying, okay, ATF has this, arm brace issue for handicapped. I need to call my buddy because he's an expert in this. That's how you can actually be the value added. So it's a representative republic only sort of works also when the public is part of the process.
Is that possible?
Yeah. Because at some point there's nothing good to watch on Netflix.
Yeah, run through it all. And I think for me, the motivating factor is the future. And I know that we have challenges, but we've always met the challenges as Americans as we've kind of gone through time.
We still live better than the vast majority of the world. Other than a couple oil emirates, we still have a higher living standard. It's substantially higher than Europe. Mm-hmm. People don't, we live better in Europe. Okay, can I show you the per capita living standards? Or Japan, we live much better. But the entire industrialized world is actually going through a fascinating cycle right now. We're getting old very fast. Many places are having sort of a population rollover. Our demographics are really, really tough. If we're going to have another American century, you got to unleash the creativity, but you also got to unleash the creative destruction. You got to be willing to let some businesses fail or some ideas fail. And this, the things that have made us a dynamic economy. Because if you actually look at the economic history, particularly the last 50 years, it was the United States tolerance of the cycle of, creative destruction and rebirth that made us so much more prosperous. And I will argue, particularly the last decade, we're slowly taking that away. The banks get bigger. The chips industry gets actually, you now have to go to government for your grant. It's just government is becoming so powerful on how you finance big business or the control of it. And small business has so much trouble surviving anymore. And it doesn't need to be that way. And the reality with the supercomputers we carry in our pocket called a phone, you could revolutionize everything from healthcare. And I know one of the future podcasts we're going to do just pure healthcare disruptions. but the ability to raise money for your business, have equity crowdfunding for the woman who does tamales out of her government-subsidized apartment so she can actually be a micro-entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
There's so many neat things we could do, but you got to be willing to take on incumbent bureaucracies. And in Washington is functionally a protection racket. It's a protection racket, not of incumbent members of Congress, of incumbent business models.
Money. Comes back to the money.
It's about the money.
So next time, let's do that. Healthcare disruptions, and how the bureaucracy becomes one of the biggest challenges in America.
It's bureaucracy and incumbent business models. And this is one that you'll understand why there's some groups that it's fascinating. Come in and tell me how much they love the technology, but they're going to have to spend a bunch of money trying to beat me in the next campaign.
Mm-hmm. So hit that subscribe button, because we'll have more with Congressman David Schweikert real soon right here on Equal Matters. Congressman, thanks for your time as always.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you again to Congressman David Schweikert from Arizona for joining us today on Equal Matters. What did you learn in this episode? I'd love to hear from you. Rob@equalmatters.com. I'd also love to hear what you'd love to learn more about. Maybe you have some questions for Congressman David Schweikert. If we get enough good, thought-provoking questions, David says he'll sit down and answer those questions. So, again, send them my way, rob@equalmatters.com. A few more challenges. We're scheduled to talk with Congressman David Schweikert about our health care costs and how that could basically bankrupt the entire country. That one's going to be fun, but there are some solutions that Schweikert dreams about and shares with us. Another conversation we have planned with the congressman is how the United States federal government is borrowing twice as much money this year than anticipated. That's causing some challenges, but Congressman Schweikert's up for those challenges. Next week, we go back to health, because two doctors changed my mind about how I approach my health, and I want you to meet them. These are chiropractors who specialize in optimal living. Dr. Keiko Finnegan and Dr. Sarah Shepard. They opened my mind to a different approach to health, about being my own health advocate in a way towards optimal living. We'll explain what that means, how to get there, and how to be your own best health advocate. Next week, with Dr. Keiko and Dr. Sarah, we'll learn how to approach health from the inside out. So don't forget to subscribe to Equal Matters. You'll get that episode sent to you automatically. And if you have friends that are interested in these types of conversations, please send them Equal Matters. Think of Equal Matters as one big old porch. We're all going to gather together and have important conversations. If you have comments and feedback, again, my email address is rob@equalmatters.com. My name is Rob Hunter. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on Equal Matters. Good night.